Hey Ben, thanks for joining me this afternoon. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to speak with you, mainly because one, we work together, which I'll kind of disclose, and then at a later on story that I have about you actually. But I'm really excited to speak with you because we've never had like a financial person on this podcast. And I think it's so critical for startups and small businesses to really have kind of a cash flow plan, a budget plan, a bookkeeping plan in place. Before we dive into all of that, Ben, why don't you just kind of give me the story of Ben? Give me the story of you, of Pinto Financial, and kind of tell me how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah. I'll go back to college. I'm about 10 years out of college. I went to Iowa State. I did a mechanical engineering degree. So I have that as a foundation. Worked as an engineer for a good part of my career, and I knew I wanted to change over to the financial realm. I got my MBA, went back to school, got my MBA, and decided to start looking at a career change. And um, I didn't really have any experience on my resume. I started applying and was getting rejected, rejected, rejected. I'm like, you know what? I'll just go start creating my own experience. So there's some friends and colleagues kind of in my network that had small businesses, and I put some, pretty good thought into what I wanted to get experience in. And it kind of came down to accounting and budgeting for small businesses. I felt I was passionate about it. I could make a big impact in that market. And so that's, kind of why I went after those markets. From there, I did some pro bono work for these people for about 6 months just to like get my feet on the ground, understand really what I wanted to offer, and kind of figure out my business strategy. And then from there, I got serious about it, and I was like, hey, you know what? I've got something here. I don't need to um, go find a job in the real world, like an investment banking job or something. I'm going to do this. I'm more passionate about it. I enjoy the entrepreneurship. I like all the challenges. So I really went all in, and I'm about 3 years in right now, and business is growing significantly every year. And I love every bit of it.
Awesome. I love that story. I think it's awesome that you kind of started down the career path, strong educational background, and said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make the leap. Talk to me about the leap into entrepreneurship. Everyone kind of has their own story around stopping whatever they were doing and then starting a business. Talk to me about that leap of faith, starting your business, what that looked like for you, when it became full time for you. Just kind of give me that transition.
Yeah, I actually started this business. My wife had a job in Singapore. We were living abroad in Singapore for about a year and a half. And I was working an engineering job over there that I really was not enjoying. And so I started working pretty much my nights over there, which was daytime here conveniently with those colleagues in my network. And so I jump on Zoom calls with them and, manage their books, help them with budgets. So really I ended up going to part time in Singapore. So I did get some, healthy time to spend on my business. So it wasn't, I quit one day and started the next. It was a little bit of a transition. But when we moved back to the States, that's kind of when I went all in. And it is nerve wracking. You go from a nice paycheck that comes in every 2 weeks or whatever your pay is to, you're dependent on earning clients' trust and doing a good job and making your own living. So it does take uh, a little confidence and some trust to do it in yourself.
Yeah, more than anything, just like consistency too. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen so many startups and small businesses that might even be cash flow positive, but they almost like punt the ball too soon for like football terms, just because it's not as big as they expected, not as grand as they expected, and like really like the scale of small business really happens like year two and three, and then it
Yeah.
probably, and then I'd even say like I've now been doing my own thing for coming up on a decade. Really like year five, six, and seven, it's like a different level of scale. So consistency, confidence, and just kind of stay in the course.
Yeah, and it takes it like you're exactly right. It takes time. You're not, you get on Instagram or wherever and everything seems like an overnight success. And that is just so untrue. I think having a good like personal financial plan, knowing I was kind of bootstrapping a business, and having, 6 months of finances ready from a personal standpoint is really good. Knowing you're not depending on growing your business every month from day one because it's just not realistic if you're bootstrapping. Even if you're raising money, it takes time. So I'm 3 years in and I still am trying to get to that point of like really being comfortable with where I'm at. I have a pretty good business around me, but it just takes time and I'm really close to that point. You just got to keep going at it.
Absolutely. Quick question for you, Ben. Would
Mhm.
you consider yourself a sales guy by any means?
No,
No. Why?
that's
Why is
probably
that?
that and marketing are probably my two least favorite aspects of business. I A lot of people would probably disagree. I would say I'm an introvert and I just have a hard time reaching out and talking to people and building myself up. I don't like the attention. And I think a lot of sales, in my opinion, anyways, kind of you have to talk about yourself. You have to build yourself up. And that's just something I'm very reserved about. So reaching out, even people I know, I don't, boast myself up or build myself up on what I'm doing. I kind of keep it inside. So that's, I think, why sales is hard for me.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask, and I started off the show by saying I had a story about you. So Ben has kind of, he's the first person I've ever worked with as kind of like a financial vendor that I just work closely with, a financial partner. I know that sounds more intense than it probably is. But when 2 years ago, when we started Agency Flair and really this podcast was just beginning, it was the first time that I wasn't running a business with a co-founder that didn't have a financial background. So I needed financial help. Ben actually reached out to me. I don't know if you recall this
Mhm.
through a cold LinkedIn message. And I hunt and I sell on LinkedIn weekly. Our clients do it weekly. I think LinkedIn's a great place for it. With all of that being said, I've actually never bought or became a client or been sold to, I should say, to anyone on LinkedIn but Ben Bramer. So, for someone that says that you're not a salesperson, you are the only person that I've actually been sold to through LinkedIn for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, and I remember that message, and I read, I have no sales background really, so I was reading all sorts of forums and blogs of like how to reach out to people on LinkedIn and follow up strategy and whatnot. And I kind of found two buckets of either just try to create a connection and like play the long term, create a relationship, go down that path, or just be blunt with what you're selling. And I chose the just be blunt because I basically was like, this is who I am. This is what I sell. Are you interested?
Yes, and
and I guess it worked. It worked maybe two or three times. I got about two or three clients from that strategy.
well, if you think of it though, that's actually pretty good ROI, especially if
Yeah.
you keep them for the long term. Obviously, this is an entrepreneurial sales podcast, and the reason I wanted to point this out is I'm glad that you remember kind of your strategy behind that message. You did take the blunt approach, and basically, I'm actually looking at the message that you sent me on April 29th, 2020. I became a client in May 2020, so like this moved fast, short sales cycle. But you ended. I'll save like I won't read the first few paragraphs, but I you ended with, if Pinto sounds like a fit for your company, may I propose a short 5 minute phone call, decide if a serious conversation is warranted. I love that because I actually use something very similar in my sales approach. And my response to you was my my response to you is funny. Ben, I like your approach, very straightforward. And so that was actually how it all started. And I think there is something to just sales and small business that like having a straightforward, just real approach about who you are, what you do, and how you can help does work. And sometimes we try to get too sexy, too creative, too whatever. too trendy, frankly, and it
Hmm.
just doesn't always work out like that. So I just thought I'd share that with you. The things I really want to dive into here, though, Ben, and that I think a lot of people listening will get a lot of value from are talk to me about like just the importance of having like a financial partner in small business. That's what I consider you. Obviously, you deal with our books, but you also deal with our cash flow projections, our budget. How important is that, and how common is it really with businesses from like 200 grand to a million in revenue?
Yeah. So most of the businesses I work with are 100,000 a year, which is pretty small to outsource up to a million, million and a half. We work up with businesses up to 10 million, but in that range, you're talking about like 200 to a million. Almost 100% of the time, 99% of the time, people do not have a budget. And when I started doing this 3 years ago, I was shocked by it. I just kind of thought everyone had a budget. Like I was flabbergasted to learn that people are just spending money, earning money with no plan. It's like they're just putting one foot in front of the next. And at the end of the year, they hope they have a
Hope it
profit.
works out.
And it's still, I can't believe it. I think having a plan is so important. You can see the whole year right in front of you. If you want to hire someone or make an investment and you don't know if you can afford it, quickly plugging those numbers into your budget tell you in a matter of 5 or 10 seconds if you can make those moves or not, rather than guessing and having it bite you down the road. So I guess Pinto Financial kind of focuses on three main things. It's bookkeeping, which I call the foundation, and you need for if you think of it in terms of a building or structure, you need a solid foundation. If you don't have a solid foundation, the building's going to crumble. Everything you do on top of it doesn't matter because at some point in time, whether it's in a month or a year or 5 years, it's not going to work out. So building that foundation, having a good, clean set of books is super important, especially for small businesses. From there, you move into basically what I call the blueprint, which is your budget or your kind of financial plan for the year. And it's not a true budget as you would think of in a huge corporation. It's more of a projection of financial strategy, a plan that we use to track what you're doing every month versus what we plan for every month. And we look at that on a quarterly basis and review and make adjustments as necessary. Things change. I don't expect to make a budget with you, James, in January and have it stick through the whole year. Things come up. You want to do different things. And then the last bit of it is once you have a nice blueprint and you have a foundation, you have a blueprint on how you want to build the structure, then you actually have to build the structure. And that is what I consider cash flow management, or zero-based budgeting. If you're not familiar with zero-based budgeting, I would highly recommend doing a quick Google search on that. We'll talk more about that a bit later. But basically, we want to plan your cash out in a certain way so we know exactly how far your money is going to take you based on the budget we have in place. And that is huge to having peace of mind that your business is creating a sustainable future, essentially.
Love it. And I probably would have not taken this information as seriously if I didn't have to venture into this world on my own. Because again, like my former co-founder that I did business with for 5 years he did all of this kind of unbeknownst to me. I just knew that like our financials were always good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we started Day Porter and Agency Flair, it was really critical to figure out like what the hell is going on. One thing that I can say firsthand, not only being a client of yours, but just being a kind of a buyer now of the strategy, is I'm not really a numbers guy when it comes to budgets, but I find myself looking at the budget that I've created with you at least 2 to 3 times per quarter. And I don't even like rearrange numbers and stuff, but it helps
Mm-hmm.
me with big decisions. Like we had to invest 20 grand into Zoom info for sales data. It's a shit ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
And
It
so
is.
we're like, okay, how can we figure out $5,000 extra a quarter? And due to the budget we laid out, we've been able to like, I was able to like look at that without having to call you and bug you, number one. and then just say, okay, we can do this. So I recommend it to any small business, and then any like big boy business has a financial plan in place. Talk to me real fast. Like, what does cash flow management mean? Like, talk to someone that might not be in the financial world. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so you could have a whole bunch of definitions for cash flow, but what I personally think is the best for small business is it's called a zero-based budget, which don't get that confused with making our budget and plan for the year. A zero-based budget is think back before we had any digital tools, back in the 70s, right? You had envelopes. People put money in envelopes for gas, for food, whatever they wanted to save money for a vacation. So let's just use a metaphor of putting your money in envelopes. And when it's gone, it's gone. And if you have leftover money, you can use it next month. So when we put this financial yearly roadmap together, we're going to have a whole bunch of envelopes for each of those categories. And we're going to take all the money in your bank. Let's say you have 100,000 in your bank. We're going to take all that money and fill all those envelopes for the first month until that budget we made, that plan we made is kind of satisfied. And then once those envelopes are full, we're going to go to the next month and so forth. So we want to the goal is to fill as many months of envelopes as we can. Now we're not actually putting money in envelopes. There's digital software tools to do this nowadays. But that to me is planning your cash for the future and seeing your cash in action. So when you log into your bank or you log into QuickBooks and you see $100,000 or whatever your number is, that doesn't matter as much. But when you see a big number in your bank, you don't just assume, hey, we have 20,000 to go blow on Zoom info, right? It looks like it's there, but you have all these other expenses and liabilities and responsibilities that you have to pay as a business owner. And do you really have that 20,000 to go spend, or is that something you need to save for over the next 6 months or a year? And if you need to save for it, we'll create another envelope and save a certain amount every month until you're ready to make that decision. Does
Yeah,
that clarify that a
absolutely.
little bit? I hope.
No, absolutely. Because I think it's so critical. It's just like learning how to measure your cash flow and not just
Mhm.
manage it, but how to measure it like and project it for future, assets or investments that you want to make moving forward. And I'll say this: since working with Ben, our budget's been plus or minus just a few percentage points every time we've done it, and it's really been helpful. Common challenges been that most small businesses and entrepreneurs make when it comes to their finances and bookkeepings. What have you seen?
Yeah, I'll split this first challenge I have. I'll split into two areas. The first would be bookkeeping. It's just not a desirable area that most people like dabbling with. So they don't put the time into it. That's something we enjoy. We're good at over here at Pinto Financial. So when you don't have the desire to do it, you don't make the time to do it. And then month after month after month goes by and it gets neglected and then it gets messy and really difficult. And then tax season comes around and then you have this huge mess and that's when you get stressed. So that's probably the biggest challenge I see with small business owners. They just don't want to do it. And then it builds into this larger problem that they may or may not realize down the road. Um, that brings me into being prepared for taxes. So
Mm-hmm.
doing this month over month, whether you outsource it or not, is so important because I've talked to so many people, they'll have like a 2 week period prior to the tax deadline of just racking their brains over what did I do a year ago? Why is my income so high or so low, or this doesn't make sense. So there's a whole stress factor there that I think is a secondhand challenge of the lack of desire to do their books. The other big one is people a lot of times think they know what they're doing, and sometimes that's correct. But I've seen many, many times as well where I'll take over an account from a client who's been managing their own books and they're like, hey, my books are in great shape. And I'll get in there and I'll find that their income is doubled or their expenses are way out of whack. And I'll ask questions, and um, things don't really line up. So it's, I don't want to put people at fault here, but it's a common thing. You're an expert at your business. We're experts at the financial side of business. You do what you do well and leave the financial dealings of your business up to someone else who really knows what they're doing. I think that would be a huge piece of advice. I do know that brings in the, you have to pay for that service, and a lot of it's a non-revenue generating service that Pinto provides. I get that, small business. Um, you have to value every dollar, and it really has to be important. Argument to that, um, my argument to that would be the amount of time and stress you have to put into doing your own books for a couple $100. That stress can go away, and I think that's really valuable. And I think that there's this huge dollar amount stigma related to accounting and financial work, that it's really expensive and it's really high. And I would argue it's within reason of most budgets of small businesses from 200 to a million in revenue a year.
As business owners, as entrepreneurs, it's absolutely crucial that we delegate the tasks that just don't move the needle for us, that we find no desire in, that we find no, you're really just like passion in, because energy, I believe, is so important when running a business. With that being said, when we're talking about financials, cash flow, budgeting, bookkeeping, that's the lifeline of your business. So, by all intents and purposes, if you don't have a desire in that, then you got to delegate it. And that's kind of where I found myself, is like, hey, I know what I don't know. I know that I can't do this. So, I need to hire expert help. Just like I expect companies to hire expert help if they can't increase their business and they need more sales when it comes to what I do. So, if you're a business owner listening to this, if you're an entrepreneur, delegate the undesirable. And if that's financials, delegate it. I think it's just that simple. And I would actually argue too, like I'm the poster child of what not to do when it comes to taxes. And I mean that by not like I always pay my taxes. But I really fucking hate it, because you're right, those 2 weeks leading up to it, I know I'm about to write the IRS a big check. I'm racking my brain on what the hell I did for the last year, where I can find deductions. And then, it's a lot of money coming out of your cash flow. So the last few years working with someone like yourself, there has been a little bit of solidarity there, when it's like, okay, we can move this money here, we can do this here. And it's just been helpful. And one thing I would say too, if you're working with a bookkeeper or just a financial partner, like have them work in tandem, or at least be aware of your CPA, right? I think that's a big thing. Like you were really great at teeing up my taxes for my CPA, which made it super easy and streamlined. So not sure if you have any comments on kind of working in tandem with CPAs, but I know that's a big thing.
Yeah, you brought up two different points, totally separate. So that, to touch on the CPA point, if you don't have a CPA and you're a business owner, I highly, highly, highly recommend you hire a CPA. They will make your life much easier. Myself, I have a CPA I partner with. They're located in Denver. They're great. I've passed a lot of my clients off to them. And then I work in tandem with that CPA to kind of keep you as a business owner out of the loop as much as possible, take that stress off of you. And then in James' case, he has his own CPA. I will work directly with his CPA if preferred. James can be a middleman if he prefers. I want to make James's tax life as easy as possible. That's my goal here at Pinto. And, we've had success with that in the past, and with other clients as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have, man. And a lot of that, again, kind of comes down to budget, cash flow management, and projecting all of this out. I mean, last time we sat down for a budget, we talked about what we thought taxes might be. And I mean, you were spot on there. Like when my CPA, he kind of does the same thing. I mean, again, you guys were like right in the realm of like $200 difference. So I don't even think you had.
Yes. So that brings in the other thing you brought up was taxes and paying your tax bill at the end of the year. How many business owners are going through the year thinking about how much money they're going to owe the IRS come April or whenever they file, right? Not many. It kind of gets put off to the side. You don't think about it, but it's real money if you're making a profit that you have to pay. And that comes out of your cash flow. And a lot of businesses, one, don't budget, as we've talked about, and two, they absolutely don't plan for paying the government what they owe the government. And so part of our whole financial plan and roadmap is setting aside money on a monthly basis for taxes. And I'm not a CPA. I can't give tax advice, but what I do provide is an estimate. We'll take 15 or 20% of your net profit and just throw it in one of those quote envelopes to save for when that tax time comes. And when tax comes around, you have 15 to 20% ready to go, which is typically covers all or most of the bill. And you're not shocked. There's no sticker shock. The money's kind of sitting there waiting for the government to take it from you.
Yep, absolutely, and that's exactly what we've done, and it's been helpful. Ben, really appreciate your time today, brother. The
Thanks,
one
James.
thing we like to end the show with, and it's kind of a fun segment, is we have a white box and a black box. Random questions. Have no idea what's in here. Pick your poison: the black box or the white box. What would you like to choose from? And we'll ask the question.
Do the black box.
Okay. 80% of people go for the black box. It's I'm not kidding you. It's so funny. Um, oh man, if you could be guaranteed one thing in life besides money, well, how fitting. What would it be?
Ooh, I think for me, it'd be the ability to travel internationally 3 or 4 times a year. I love traveling. We've already got a couple trips on the books for this year. It's something I hope I'm able to do till the day I die. So if I could have like 4 awesome international trips a year, that would probably be it.
There we go. So if you're listening to this in a different part of the world and you need financial help, hire Ben, who will be linked up in the show notes below. Hey, Ben, thanks for your time, man. If people want to learn more about you, learn more about Pinto Financial, where can they find you?
Yeah, we're on the internet at www.usepinto.com. That's usepinto.com. Where you can reach me at ben@pintofinancial.com.
Cool. And we'll definitely we'll link everything up in the show notes, and we'll throw your LinkedIn profile in there, man. And
Awesome.
appreciate it and look forward to speaking with you here soon, man.
Yeah, thanks, James. Appreciate it.